Okay, well, English 111 students, welcome to English 111 Week 5 of our Fall 2020 course. Wow, it is going by fast. I know you probably feel the same way, but we are going to continue to push forward because we got a lot to do this semester. It is week 5 already, but it's only week 5. We've got 16, 17 weeks in this class, and so don't lose your stride now. Keep up the pace, keep up the work, and let's continue strong. Now, this week you will know that your essay number 1 is due, the final draft, the one that I'm going to grade. And so, wait until you've gotten my feedback on your rough draft. If you turned in a rough draft, again, you don't have to turn in a rough draft, but if you did, wait till you get my feedback. It'll take me a couple days into the week to get you that. Wait till you get my feedback, make any corrections you need to make. And then by Sunday, September 27th, go ahead and turn that final draft in. You'll find the upload link for the final draft in the week 5 folder. So the week 21, September 21st through 27th, week 5 folder, and you'll want to turn it in there. Okay, so again, wait till you get feedback on a rough draft. If you turned in a rough draft, then make your corrections, then turn in your final draft. If you didn't turn in a rough draft, then you can go ahead and turn in your final draft if you would like. You have to turn in your final draft and the essay 1 final draft link. You can't say, well, I turned in my rough draft, so I'm good to go. No. I'm not going to grade rough drafts. I will grade only what you turn in for your final product. Okay? All right. You're also reading chapters 18 and 19 in your textbook this week. And this week we want to talk about, as you see on your screen there, research, how to do research. Now, this first essay didn't require any sources. No research was required. You're just writing on something that you have a passion about. But for the next 3 essays, we are going to ask you to do some research. So how do we do that research? Well, first of all, I want to just start off by talking about some, 4 key points in beginning research. Okay, so these are things you're going to need to think about every time you begin your research, and we'll see these things again later in the lecture. So, first, consider the situation, the context in which you're writing. How much time do you have to write? What places do you have to write in? What are the conditions that you're going to be writing under, or what are the conditions that you need to write under to maximize your potential as a writer, right? So consider your situation. Look around, find the best time to write, find the best place to write, find the best conditions under which to write, and you'll get your best results, okay? So always consider the situation. Secondly, you always want to consider the audience. To whom are you speaking? To whom are you writing? Obviously, this is a consideration because it's going to change how you do your research and ultimately how you write or speak, right? Thirdly, consider the field. What type of data is preferred in the field in which you're doing your research? For example, if we're studying history, oftentimes historical research is more qualitative in nature, whereas scientific research, if you're doing a science paper, math paper, that type of thing, or you're going to speak on science or math related topics, your data is going to typically be more quantitative. So that's going to affect the kind of research you do. Whether you're doing qualitative research, quantitative research, a combination of the two, you've got to consider the topic area or field in which you're speaking/writing. Okay, and then fourthly, consider the availability. Data can be found in libraries, databases, found online on the internet, in interviews, surveys, experiments, etc. But not all data is available. Maybe you're going to do it in an area where there's not been a lot of research or a lot of data generated. You're not going to be able to find as much. And in a course like this where we're doing research, if you can't find anything for the research, you probably need to tweak your topic or change your topic or something of that nature. Okay, so these are just some introductory key points that I want to make when you're beginning research. These are not the end-all be-all, but they are things that we want to consider. All right, so how do we do research? I want to explore library resources first. And in order to do that, we are going to have to leave this and go to a different page. And so I am going to, the best I can, there we go. We are going to leave this page if I can. Let me see here, I'll end show. There we go. I didn't want to do that. Bear with me, folks. It's technology. But Go ahead, if you want to follow along with me, go ahead and sign into www.centralvirginia.edu. Okay, so go to the Central Virginia website. And once you get there, I want you to click on Student Services up here at the top where I'm circling with my cursor. So Student Services. Then you'll see some stuff on the left-hand side here where my cursor is. I want you to click on Library. And then finally click on Library Research on the left-hand side as well where I'm circling now. There we go. And that's going to take you to this page. If you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see that it says Databases. Now, we're going to be looking at databases today because databases are where we can find a lot of information. Now, what is a database? A database is basically, I'm going to give you the short version here. The database is basically a collection of resources. So somebody has gone out and said, okay, I want to collect resources on a particular topic. And so they take all those resources on that particular topic and they put them into a database, a centralized location where somebody can go and find that information. If you click on databases A to Z here under databases, you'll see we get to this page. It says 215 databases found. So Central Virginia Community College subscribes to 215 databases, and they range in topic areas. I mean, look at them here. You've got African American poetry. So somebody has gone in and collected all the resources they can find online that relate to African American poetry, and they've put them in this database that they've labeled African American Poetry 1760 to 1900. You see they give a little annotated description there of what this database contains, and there you go. So if you wanted that, if you were looking for, African American poetry, 1760 to 1900, you could go to this database and find it. Or look down here, AIDS and cancer research. If you were doing AIDS and cancer research, you could go in here in this database and they'd have all kinds of stuff. Just keep scrolling. You can see there are a lot of them. Let's go down to the C's. What can we find here? Core historical literature of agriculture. You can see they get really nuanced, right? I don't know how many people are going to be writing papers related to the core historical literature of agriculture, but hey, if you find yourself in that topic area, right here you go, right? We go on down and let's go into the F's and see what we got. Here we go, films on demand, family studies abstract. So if you're doing something in family studies, maybe you would go here. A lot of stuff on films. Historical abstracts, you'd go there. Let's keep on going down here, see what else we can find. Oceanic abstracts, so you're going to write on the ocean. See, I mean, you get it. We could keep scrolling, couldn't we? Science magazine, science in context, safari books online. I mean, it's just anything you can think of in these topic areas. So 215 of these databases. There are many more databases out there than that, but CVCC describes or subscribed to 215 of them. Now you might say, well, how in the world would I know where to start? Well, here's the beauty. You don't have to go to these individual abstracts. You can go to Academic Search Complete, the second one down. And Academic Search Complete accesses all of the databases, okay? So I got to sign in here real quick. You'll have to sign in to use it. It always gives me that forbidden message first. I'm not sure why, but you will get to this page. Once you click on Academic Search Complete, you will get to this EBSCOhost page, and this, folks, is going to be your friend. Let's say, for example, I want to search my topic. Say I'm going to do a paper on geology. So I type in geology. All right, I type it in there in the subject area, and I hit search. Now it's going to find all that it can find on geology, and you can see that it's going to find a lot because right here it says 248,909 results found. Folks, I can't search 248,909 results. So I need to refine my search. And we refine our searches through something called Boolean operators, B-O-O-L-E-A-N, Boolean operators. And Boolean operators are three words. And, I clicked on them there, and, or, and not. And, or, and not. When we use, and I'm going to go through these really quickly, but when we use and in a Boolean search, we are saying, I want to find sources that have both of the words on either side of the and in them. So, for example, if I say geology and oceans, right? Geology and oceans, it's going to find me all sources that deal with geology and the oceans. So oceanography, oceanic geology, marine geology, that type of stuff. So that should limit my search. I should have fewer than 248,909 sources. I think that makes sense. If it doesn't, you can email me. And sure enough, when we do that search, look what we come up with, 28,557. So that sorely limited it, right? It brought it down, but it's still not manageable. So I still need to limit my search. So I can continue to limit through uses of the Boolean operator and. So I could say geology and oceans and what? Pacific, like Pacific Ocean. So I do that. Again, it should limit my search. I should get less than 28,000. I hit search, and voila, it comes down to 3,926. Still not very manageable, but certainly more manageable than 248,000. So I could keep limiting it through the use of and. So geology and oceans and Pacific, and you get the idea, right? Now, I've put all the Boolean operators right here in the one line, but you can see the Boolean operators are here in the second line. So I could have done this search like this, like I did it, or I could do it like geology and oceans and Pacific, right? And it should give me the same results. Voila, yep, 3,926. Okay, so you can do it either way, it doesn't matter. Also, notice over here it says select a field, optional. Now, I haven't selected any field, which means it's searching everything. So it's searching titles, it's searching authors, it's searching narrative words in the body of the work, and it's looking for the words geology, oceans, and Pacific. And when it finds all three of those, it gives me that source. If I wanted to, though, I could change this and just change it to where I'm searching just text or just for authors' names. If you were just searching for an author's last name, I could just search the titles of the articles. And you can see the other limiters down here as well, some of which I don't even know what they do. But these first three are important. Search all text, search authors, search title. And if you don't select anything, then you're searching everything, okay? I usually just leave it on everything unless I'm searching for an author's name, and then I'll limit it to author, okay? Does everybody see what I'm doing there? Does that make sense? So you might want to practice this a little bit, but before you launch off into any practice, let's look at the other Boolean operators, and they make sense. So you got and, that limits your search. That says that you're looking for each one of the words in the work. Or, though, says I'm looking for either or. So geology or oceans means that I want any source that has geology in it or any source that had oceans in it. This expands my search. So now I should have more than 248,000. So I hit search, and I do 512,445. See how that expanded my search? And I could keep going. Oceans or Pacific. I hit search, and we go up to 672,139. So if I want to expand my search, I use or. If I want to limit my search, I use and, okay? And then we've got the Boolean operator, the final one, which is but. So we see it, not. And, or, and not. I don't know why I said but. And, or not. So in this one, we'd say, I want all sources with geology, but not sources with oceans. So if it has both geology, if it has geology in it, but it also says something about oceans, then I don't want it. So this is a search limiter, just like and is. So I go from 248,000 to 220,000, right? And then if I say I want that not oceans and not Pacific, then I should limit it even more from 220,000 down to 216,000. So you see how that works? We limit with and not. We expand with or. All right, folks. Let me pause for 1 second and say this. This page and this search engine, EBSCOhost, and what I've just showed you can save your academic life. You can become one of the best researchers in your class at CVCC in your graduate school, in your medical school or professional school, and in life if you can use this effectively. This will help you reach out and find the sources you are looking for. So I can't stress this enough, folks. Know this page. If you need to review how we got to this page, rewind, go back to where I showed you, starting at the CVCC website, and you go to student support, library research. That's how you get to it. This will save your life. Okay? Have I convinced you yet? I hope so. Let's go back to the library research page. That's this page right here where we saw databases. If you can go back there to me, I just want to go through a few other things with you briefly. Okay, I'm not going to cover all of these things. You can explore databases by subject. That's just what we went through. Looking at the database. Well, let me look at it real quick. It just basically says now if you want to look at the databases that just relate to science, for example, right here I can click on those, and it'll just give me the 27 databases that relate to science, and then I could find them. But again, you don't really need to go to specific databases because you can just do academic search complete, the second one down, right? There's some other stuff under here. You can look for online journals, periodicals, and newspapers. Here you can look at, you can do a quick search. I want to talk about research guides real quick. Okay, I want to talk about research guides real quick. So let's click on research guides. And what is a research guide? Basically, some classes at CVCC and maybe other colleges where you will attend, the courses or the subject departments will put together research guides where they put together online books, articles, websites, anything that you can click on and get to that might be helpful to you in that class or in that subject area. For example, here we got American history. So the American history folks at CVCC have put together a research guide. And if you click on it, they're going to give you stuff that will help you if you're in an American history class. So, for example, finding books over here on the left. If you look at that, they're going to give you some ideas of some good American history books that you can find at our library. So you can click on those to get a better description. And then it'll give you call numbers. You can see the call number right there. I'm circling it with my cursor, where you could find that book in the library. Or if you're looking for articles, they've gotten some links to some good articles. You just click on these links and it'll take you to those articles. References, what are some reference materials that you might find in American history? And again, you got call numbers there. You can go find them. Recommended websites, just a couple, but they have some there. Videos and multimedia, so there's some things you can click on there, some videos you can watch. Looks like some good stuff. And then how do you cite sources for something like this? And why cite a source? I give you that there. And then citation generators and databases will help you make citations for your papers. I mean, it's just a wealth of material. And that, again, is right here under research guides, okay? So you can click on that and you can find really anything you need. And then you can explore these other resources on the library website. Okay? But isn't that cool? I mean, everything you need is right here. Now, this quick search, books, DVDs, and CDs. Let me take you to that real quick. This is just a quick search. So if you want to do geology, you can use your Boolean operators here too. So let's say geology and oceans. And we click enter, and that's going to give you a quick search of some of the stuff that might be available at our library. Okay. And you can go over here to Library Central Virginia Community College and click on that, and it'll tell you if we have it there in our college library, and you can find the call number right here. Now it says it's checked out right now, and you can see that, so you wouldn't be able to get it. But if it were not checked out, you could lay your hands on it, right? Okay. And again, that was under quick search. So that's another thing that you can use. Again, I would just encourage you to go explore all of these things and see what you can find, because there's a lot of resources here, wonderful things that you can find. But I'm telling you right now, between you and me, databases A to Z, go down to Academic Search Complete. You get to this page on the EBSCOhost, this is your moneymaker, okay? This is where you will find what you need. And you can also go to our library and search things out there. The librarians will be more than happy to help you find books on the shelf or articles or anything that they have there that you can use, okay? All right. Well, the next thing I want to do is, because everybody likes to go here, don't they? Google. And everybody just wants to say, well, I'll just Google geology. And they do it, and 514 million sites and hits come back. 514 million. Now, how many people can search through 514 million? You say, well, just use your Boolean operators, because you can use Boolean operators in Google. So I'll say geology and oceans and Pacific. Enter, and I'm going good, right? Because now I only have 80,600,000. Folks, Google's just too big. And the bad thing about Google is it's TMI, right? Too much information. And the other bad thing about it is so much of that information is not vetted. There's no one that says this is good information versus bad information. Now, when you go to databases A to Z and you're searching EBSCOhost, you can bank on everything you come in contact with there. The research material is going to be peer-reviewed, good, solid research material. Not so on Google. And so you're like, well, you mean I can't use Google? And the answer is, no, you can use Google. We'll talk about how to vet sources here in a minute. But yeah, you can use Google. But here's my suggestion. Who's heard of Google Scholar? Let's search that real quick. And there it is, Google Scholar, Google Scholar. Now, what Google Scholar does is people have keyed each site or page or article or whatever, and they've said this is an academic source. And now when Google searches, it doesn't search everything with geology in it, only those things that have been keyed as scholarly. In other words, journal articles, things of that nature. Now this time I searched geology. Remember last time I got 514 million hits. This time I only got 3.5 million. So you can see that a lot of that stuff was not keyed as scholarly. And then if I go in and I put in and oceans and Pacific, you can see that I'm going to get far fewer results. Now it's still 753,000, but that's far better than what would we get last time? 80 million or something when we searched these three in regular Google. And again, I can rest assured that virtually all of these sources are going to be scholarly, peer-reviewed, things that I can trust. So here's my thing. If you want to use Google, that's fine, but use Google Scholar. And if you're going to use regular Google, we're going to apply some tests and some litmus tests in a little bit here as we continue in the lecture that'll hopefully help you to sift through the good sites and the not so good sites. Okay? All right. All right, so back to my presentation here. Okay. So we went through a demonstration of library resources. We went through a demonstration of Google. Now let's talk about evaluating our sources. Because now I've taught you, and I know it was quick, folks. It would take us about 22 minutes. So I know it's quick. I went through it. But you can go back and rewind this and look at it multiple times. And here's the other thing. Just go practice with it. Everything I just showed you, if you need to review this a little bit more, that's fine. But just go back and practice it. The more you practice it, the more you'll get used to using it. Use your Boolean operators and, or, and not. And just try to play around with it and find some sources. Okay? And if you're going to use Google Scholar. And if you're not going to use Google Scholar, you need to apply evaluation techniques for your sources. And this applies to whatever you're using. So let's talk about evaluating your sources. Something I talk about are the alls, A-L-L-S, as you can see here, the alls. And that is this. First, all information is biased. People say, well, I'm completely objective. There's no subjectivity to me. I look at things through a logical lens, and I say bull. All of us are biased in a little way. And I'm not talking about racial biases and all that, so don't read into what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we're biased with our information. We're biased with the things that we see and don't see when we're looking at information or when we're thinking about things. Why is that? Because we're human. Because we're frail. We're faulty. We have weaknesses, right? And that's not well, you might say it's a bad thing, but it's a real thing. We've all got our weak spots. We've all got our blind spots. We've all got our failures. And so by virtue of all that, no information that we give out, we write about, we speak about, is going to be unbiased completely. We bring in our biases, and so does every other person in the world. And so when you look at information, realize that it's all biased. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying that you can't trust people. I'm saying is you just have to be aware that everything is not 100% truth and not 100% authentic, because we all bring our biases to the equation. Second of all writers have a limited point of view. No one has 360-degree clarity on anything. We all have a limited amount of knowledge, awareness, perspective, etc. And so even if somebody has 27 PhDs, they still have a limited point of view. They only know what they know, and they don't know everything else. Okay? So everybody is biased. Everybody has a limited point of view. And then thirdly, all researchers are tempted to exclude contradictory evidence. Now, I didn't say all researchers exclude contradictory evidence. I said all researchers are tempted to exclude contradictory evidence. Why? Because we know if we present the contradictory evidence, we think it could hurt our case. We'll talk more about that later in the semester. That's not the case, but we're tempted. I don't really want to say that because that might lead my readers, my hearers, down another path that I don't want them to go. And unfortunately, a lot of researchers fall prey to their temptations. And so we've got to be aware that when we look at something, we read something, we read about some research, we listen to a news account, we listen to a speaker, that number one, that speaker is going to have biases. Don't know what they are necessarily, but they're going to have them. Number two, that person has a limited amount of knowledge in their brain, right? They have a limited point of view. And then thirdly, remember, that person has been tempted to exclude contradictory evidence, which means there's a high likelihood that he or she may have excluded contradictory evidence. And so beware of the alls. So let's talk about assessing print resources for a few minutes. So if I got a print resource, a book in my hands, an article, journal article, magazine article, whatever it might be, something that's in print that I'm reading, I've got to think about some things when I'm assessing it. First of all, is it relevant? Does the source relate to what I'm talking about or speaking about? If I'm going to be writing a paper about a certain subject, is my source relevant? That's first. I mean, you can say, I guess it kind of goes without saying. Yeah, maybe it does, but we need to say it. First of all, and then second of all, what are the author's credentials? Is the person credentialed with experience or actual credentials to be speaking or writing on this subject? That's number two. Number three, what's the author's point of view? What's the person's stance? Do they have political biases? Do they have social biases, religious biases, whatever, that are going to be coloring what they say? We need to know about those. What are the publisher's credentials? Is this publisher reputable? Do they have other reputable books and articles or whatnot out there? What's the publisher's point of view? Again, political, social, religious, whatever. We need to know that because that's going to color what they publish. What's the currency of the source? Is the source 100 years old or is it 1 year old? In some cases, like historical research, we don't mind if something's 100 years old. In fact, we might want something to be 200 or 300 years old as a primary source. However, in mathematics and technology and science, we want our sources typically to be more current, within usually about 10 years, sometimes within 5 or fewer years. So we need to consider the currency of our source. We need to consider the accuracy of our source. Has our source been shown to be accurate in the past, or have flaws been found in it? Because that's going to affect whether we use it or not. The level of specialization of the source. In other words, if I'm writing a paper, a very nuanced paper, say on, the Black Lives Matters movement, am I going to do I just want a general source on race relations in America? Or do I want a source that specifically talks about Black Lives Matter? Well, the answer is I probably want sources that talk about Black Lives Matter, not just racism in general. But if I'm writing a paper on BLM, I want to know more about this organization, BLM. So I want a level of specialization that's very narrow. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Again, we talked about this earlier, but consider the audience. Who am I writing to? Consider the length. If I'm writing a very long dissertation level topic, I'm probably going to want a lot of sources and very specialized sources. If I'm writing a very general paper of only a couple pages, I may not need as many sources and certainly maybe not as specialized sources, right? What's the availability of the print sources. I mean, if I can't find the sources, they're not available, that's a problem, right? And then omissions. What are omitted from the print sources? Omissions can be just as harmful to our research and to the use of a source as things that are included in the source. So we need to look for what things are not talked about. For example, just to give you an example, if we're writing a paper on abortion, but the paper, and let's say the paper we're reading, the resource we're reading is a pro-life resource, but they say nothing about pro-choice in that article, well, that's not, then they're omitting half the argument, right? So I don't know if I want to use that paper. I want a paper that addresses the author's own point of view, but also the alternate points of view as well, and at least addresses them in some way. Okay. So that's a lot to think about. Assessing online sources, and you got to be careful, right? Online sources, you got to be very, very careful because online sources, there's so many things online that are bad, false, unscholarly, have false information on them, etc. And so we've got to be very careful. So here's some things when you're assessing online sources that you might use as tools. First of all is this idea of triangulation. If you find something on 3 reputable sources, and it says the same thing about whatever you're looking for, then by triangulation, 3 sources, you can maybe start to be more confident in that information because you found it in 3 reputable sources. If I find something only in one source, I can't find it anywhere else, I'm going to be kind of skeptical about that information. Nobody else is talking about it, just this one source, I'm going to be a little bit skeptical. But if I find it in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sources, then I'm going to start to think, hey, maybe there's something to this, right? So triangulation is a tool you can use. Also, this is just a very general statement, but we prefer .gov.mil and .edu sites over .com.org and .net sites because .com.org and .net sites can be purchased by anybody and oftentimes are purchased by independent people or groups that don't peer review themselves. However, .gov.mil and .edu sites typically are peer reviewed to some extent. In other words, professional people are looking at it and going, yeah, that's good information, let's put it up. Or no, that's not so good information, let's not put that up. Now, there are some great .com.org and .net sites out there. For example, National Geographic, I believe, is a .org site. So can you use .org, .coms, .nets? Absolutely. But you've got to vet them. You've got to look at them first and put some careful scrutiny into them, right, to make sure they're good sources. Thirdly, consider the author or authors who wrote the page. That's important. Do they use other sources? Fourthly, in other words, do they have a bibliography? And consider any site bias as well. For example, if I go to the Republican National Convention site or the Democratic National Convention site, I know I'm going to kind of get one side for either one of those. One's going to be a conservative viewpoint. One's going to be a liberal viewpoint, progressive viewpoint. So I know I'm not going to get unbiased information there. That's going to have some site bias. Each one of those sites is going to have some site bias, right? Especially this time of year when we're getting ready for an election. So we got to consider that when we're using our sources. Now, you may want the bias. Maybe that's what you're looking for. But be very careful, okay? Some specific questions you can ask yourself when looking at online sources, and these relate a lot to the previous slide, but who owns the site? How credible is the author or the owner? Can the information presented be corroborated elsewhere? That's triangulation. Are the sources credited on the site? That's use of sources. How current is the site? And are multiple perspectives represented? Okay. Some practical pointers about online sources. Again, a lot of these are relating to the previous 2 slides, but consider the URL. Does it look or sound kind of wacky? I mean, sometimes we see some websites that sound kind of wacky. I'll show you one right here. If you look down, third one down here, http www.unmuseum.org/hollow. That's the hollow Earth hypothesis. And anyway, or look at the 5th one down here, http Spookygeology.com. Just on the face, right? Those sites kind of sound wacky. If you look at a URL and you go, that sounds childish, it sounds immature, it sounds weird, It's probably not going to be a good source, to be honest with you, and I wouldn't use it at all in an academic paper. Consider the date. When was the site last updated? You can find that oftentimes by looking down the site, right? And looking for a date of publication. If it doesn't say 2020 on it and you're in 2020, don't use it. Consider the owner. Again, is it .gov.mil.edu or is it .com.net.org? Already talked about that. Consider the quality of the site. What's the quality of the website? Is it just look childish, look like a 3-year-old built it, or does it look professional? If it looks like a 3-year-old built it, don't use it. And consider the content. Again, kind of like the URL. Does it just sound wacky? Because if it's wacky, sounds wacky, probably is wacky. You don't want to use it. All right. Let's take a look at some of these sites. We'll go to USGS.gov. All right, United States Geological Survey. I'm just going to go through. I go through these in class typically, but since we don't have a residential class, I'll just go through them. I'm just going to hit a couple of these real quick. USGS site looks professional. It's got a good color scheme. Everything's orderly. USGS, we know that's a government agency. It's a .gov, so that's good. We scroll on down. It gives us who made it, U.S. Department, who created the site, U.S. Department of the Interior. We can click on different things. It just looks like a good site on its face. It passes all those tests, right? One thing that this site doesn't have is a date of publication on it. We've looked for it before. But again, since it's a government site, the assumption, I guess, is that it would be kept up to date, right? All right. Let me skip down to this www.unmuseum.org. We click on that. Now, this one, again, kind of looks like a 3-year-old built it. You got moving diagrams. You've got all kinds of color schemes. You've got advertisements. Advertisements around a website are a dead giveaway that you might be tending towards an unprofessional website. Lots of advertisements. Look at this date on it. Copyright Lee Christek, 1997. So the article that they have on their page is from 1997. Folks, that's 23 years ago. Some of you weren't even born when the person wrote this. Folks, on its face, this is a bogus site. You wouldn't want to use this in an academic paper. Spookygeology.com. Now, ironically enough, Spookygeology.com is not a bad site. It's actually got a good color scheme, good layout. It's simple. It's got some good articles here. Actually, they've updated the site since I last looked at it. It looks really nice now. Maybe a little bit too much information, but they're doing a great job here of keeping it up. And in fact, if you look through this site, I'm not going to do it a lot right now, but it's kind of a weird topic area, Earth's mysteries, weird locations, anomalous phenomena, but it's actually a good site. So when you get on there, even though the URL sounds kind of weird, the site itself isn't bad. So you can't always go by the URL. And I know I'm going through this fast. Let's do one more. This one is a geology website from jmu.edu. So good.edu. Kind of looks a little bit childish, old-fashioned, if you will, early generation of web pages, web page design. But I can tell you that the information on this site is phenomenal. Dr. Lynn Fichter, who actually was a professor of mine when I was an undergraduate, phenomenal teacher, phenomenal scientist, and he provides phenomenal resources on this site. So this is a great site. In fact, you might want to earmark this site. You might want to use it for some of your own research if you do something on a scientific topic like igneous rocks or geology or anything like that. Wow. All right. So I've been talking for about 40 minutes now, and I think that's enough. I think what you need to do is go out, play around with that databases A to Z stuff. I'll try to see if I can go back here. Go back to the library website here. Click on databases A to Z. Right? Academic search complete. I don't know why it kicked me out, but sign in if you need to. And then you get to that EBSCO host page, and this, my friends, is your bread and your butter. All right? So, play around with that. Practice with it. Do some research. And find some sources. Just, like I say, just play around. 30 minutes. Give yourself 30 minutes this week play around on this, do some research, see what you can find. You might even research for another class you have, right? Maybe you're doing a paper in another class, and you can actually kill two birds with one stone. All right, so this is week 5, September 21st through the 27th. We are learning about research this week, chapters 18 and 19 in your textbook. You are turning in essay number 1 in the week 5 folder. You must do it by Sunday, September 27th. And folks, let's end it there. I hope you have a great week. Email me if you have any questions or concerns. I am here for you every day. Reach out to me if you need me, all right? Have a great week.